My name is Diana Whitmore. I'm 36 years old. And until that Saturday morning, I believed betrayal would be loud, messy, explosive. Something that shattered glass and slammed doors. Something you could point to and say, there. That was the moment everything ended. I thought even if it destroyed you, at least it would be clear. I was wrong. Because the worst kind of betrayal doesn't announce itself. It doesn't knock. It doesn't even look guilty when it walks through your front door. It looks normal, like a husband calmly making coffee, like a quiet house on a Saturday morning, like your 16-year-old son calling you while you're standing in the cereal aisle. I remember the exact moment my life split in two, not because of what I saw, but because of how he breathed. Mom! Just that, one word. But it wasn't a normal mom. It wasn't impatient or distracted or teenage annoyed. It was small, fragile, like something inside him had already broken before he dialed my number. I tightened my grip on the shopping cart. Around me, everything stayed painfully ordinary. Fluorescent lights humming overhead, a woman comparing cereal boxes, a toddler laughing somewhere behind me. Nathan, what's wrong? Silence. Then, Dad showed me something. My heart didn't drop all at once. It tilted, slowly, like a glass beginning to fall off a table. What did he show you? Another pause. And then the words that rearranged everything. The messages. The world didn't stop. That's the part no one tells you. Nothing dramatic happens on the outside when your life collapses. A man reached past me to grab a box from the top shelf. A child dropped a cracker and started crying. And my 16-year-old son stood somewhere in my house, holding proof of who I really was. Mom, he said again, softer this time. He showed me everything. My knees gave out before I even realized they were shaking. I sat down right there on the cold grocery store floor. Not gracefully, not slowly, just gone. Nathan, I'm coming home. I'm getting in the car right now. Why did you do it? There it was. The question I had been carefully avoiding asking myself. 16 years old, standing in a house I had built with his father, holding words I had written to another man, and asking me why. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out, because there is no answer that survives that moment. I'll explain everything when I get home, I said instead. I promise. I don't want you to come home. The sentence landed harder than anything else. I don't want to see you right now. Nathan, I hate you. He didn't yell. That's what made it worse. It wasn't anger. It was certainty. I have heard those words before. Every parent has. Thrown out during arguments over curfews or rules or things that don't matter a week later. But this wasn't that version. This one didn't pass through me. It stayed. It lodged somewhere deep and permanent. I hate you. And then the line went dead. I sat there for 4 minutes. I know because I checked. 4 minutes on a grocery store floor, staring at nothing, while the life I thought I had carefully constructed collapsed into something unrecognizable. A store employee asked if I was okay. I said yes, because what else do you say? No, I just lost my son in aisle 7. I left the cart, walked out, sat in my car, and called my husband. Ethan answered on the first ring. Of course he did. He always answered. 11 years together, and that had never changed. Ethan, you showed him? Yes. No hesitation. No apology. Just the truth. He's 16, I said. He didn't need to see that. He asked why his mother was moving out, Ethan replied calmly. I decided he deserved an honest answer. Moving out? The words didn't register at first. When am I moving out? I'd like you to take what you need this weekend. My lawyer will send the paperwork Monday. Lawyer. Paperwork. Weekend. He had already finished the story I thought we were just beginning. Ethan. Nathan. Nathan is upset, he said. He should be. I closed my eyes. You shouldn't have shown him. Silence. Then, quietly, you shouldn't have written them. And just like that, he hung up. I drove home anyway, because whatever I had broken, I was still his mother, or at least I needed to try to be. Nathan's door was closed. I knocked. No answer. Nathan? I don't want to talk. I just need to see that you're okay. I'm fine. His voice cracked on the word fine. Please go away. Please. Even then, even after everything. He said please. I stood there for a long time after that, hand on the door, knowing I couldn't fix this. Not with words. Not with apologies. Not with anything. I went to the kitchen, made coffee, didn't drink it, just sat there, staring at the table Ethan and I had picked out 7 years ago, when Nathan was 9 and asked 100 questions about how furniture was made. I used to think I knew everything about my son, what he liked, how he thought, who he was becoming. But sitting there, I realized how much of his life I had missed while convincing myself everything was fine, while calling something harmless that was never harmless. By the time the sun started setting, I understood one thing with absolute clarity. This wasn't a moment. This wasn't a mistake you apologize for and move past. This was a fracture, and everything I loved was already on the other side of it. And I was still standing here, on the wrong side, holding nothing but silence, and the echo of my son's voice. "I hate you," my mother called the next evening. Not to ask if I had eaten, not to ask if I was alone, not even to ask if what Ethan had told her was true. By the time her name lit up on my screen, I already knew the call was not coming from a place I could rest in. I answered anyway, because some part of me was still foolish enough to believe that when everything else fell apart, a mother might still sound like shelter. "Diana," she said. Her voice was calm, too calm. That was always the danger with my mother. She was never a woman who reacted first and thought later. She thought carefully, silently, completely. And once she arrived somewhere emotionally, she stayed there. No drama, no confusion, just finality. "I've been speaking with Ethan," she said. For a second, I just stared at the kitchen window in front of me, at the reflection of my own face looking like someone I would not have trusted. "You've been speaking with Ethan?" "He called on Friday." Friday. I was still in the house on Friday. Still sleeping under the same roof. Still moving from room to room inside a life that had already begun shutting me out without my knowledge. "He told us everything," she continued. Then a beat. He sent us the messages. Not all of them, I realized. Just enough. Enough for context. Enough for judgment. Enough for my parents to see me stripped down to the ugliest version of myself through the clean, glowing screen of a forwarded thread. "Mom, I need to explain." There was a pause on the line. Not hesitation. "Decision." "Diana," she said quietly. I read them. "There is nothing you can explain that changes what they are." I closed my eyes. Her words should have cut fast, but somehow they didn't. They settled slowly, like snow over something already dead. I don't know what I had expected from her. Maybe not forgiveness, maybe not even comfort, but some instinctive reaching, some recognition that I was still her daughter, even while being the person who had done this. Instead, what I heard was distance arranging itself into language. "Your father and I have spent the last 2 days talking about this," she said. "We've prayed about it. We've thought carefully about Nathan." At my son's name, something in me tightened. "Nathan needs stability right now," she said. "He needs adults around him who are not asking him to carry anything heavier than he already is." I leaned against the kitchen counter. "I'm not asking him to carry me." "Aren't you?" The question was quiet. That made it worse. I looked down at my hand, gripping the edge of the counter so hard my knuckles had gone white. "Mom, I need you right now." And there it was, the naked truth, the humiliating, childlike truth of it. I needed my mother. Not because I deserved her, because I was drowning. "I know you do," she said, and for one flicker of a second, I heard something softer underneath the restraint. Pain, maybe. Love, maybe. Something that had to be locked behind the rest of what she had chosen. Then it was gone. "But Nathan needs us more," she said, "and Ethan needs support as he handles what comes next. I cannot be in both places right now." In both places? As if loving me, standing beside me, would place her in moral conflict with the rest of the family. Maybe it would have. Maybe she was right. That was the part that made it unbearable. It wasn't cruelty. It was logic. It was values. It was a mother choosing the people who had been wounded over the one who had done the wounding. And even as it broke me, I understood it. "We need distance, Diana," she said. "A real distance. I don't know how long." My throat burned. "Mom, please." I hadn't begged her for anything since I was probably 10 years old. Maybe younger. My mother respected composure the way some people respect money or titles. She believed in self-control, in dignity, in not collapsing in front of people unless there was blood involved. And now I was standing in my own kitchen, begging. She inhaled softly, and I pictured her closing her eyes in that familiar way she did when something hurt, but not enough to change her conclusion. "I'm sorry," she said, and then she hung up. I stayed there with the phone still pressed to my ear for a few seconds after the line went dead, because I could not quite accept that the conversation had already ended. It was such an ordinary silence afterward. The refrigerator humming, the ticking wall clock, a car passing outside. Ordinary sounds have a kind of cruelty when your life has just been rearranged. They keep going. They refuse to match your collapse. My mother had chosen, not between children. I don't think it was that simple. She had chosen the side of the wound, and I was the knife. My father called the next morning. Early. So early the light was still gray and unfinished through the kitchen window. I knew it was him before I answered, because he never called without purpose. My father was a man who viewed conversation the way engineers view materials, use only what is necessary, and do not waste structure on ornament. "Diana." His voice was steady, almost flat. "Dad." A pause. I heard him exhale once, slowly, like a man setting something heavy down in his chest before speaking. I don't have much to say. That was how he always began, when what he meant was, I have too much to say, and I trust very little of it. He had been raised by a man who believed emotion was best carried quietly and privately. My father had inherited that discipline so completely, it sometimes felt like he had built his bones out of restraint. Still, I heard something under it. Disappointment has a sound when it's deep enough. I raised you to know better than this, he said. There was no anger in it, no shouting, just the stark, unbearable weight of certainty. I raised you to understand what a family is. I raised you to understand that love is not sustained by excitement. It is sustained by loyalty, by choices, by discipline. I sank into one of the kitchen chairs. His words were precise, almost formal, which meant he had rehearsed them. Or maybe he had repeated them to himself all night. I am very disappointed in you. If my mother's distance had hollowed me out, my father's disappointment turned the emptiness into shape. Those words do something terrible when they come from a parent who does not use them lightly. They reach backward. Suddenly you are 6 and 12 and 17 all at once. Every report card, every recital, every conversation at the dinner table about character and integrity and the kind of person you will choose to become. And there I was, 36 years old. A woman with a son, a woman who had built a career teaching ethics in literature and decision-making and consequences. A woman sitting in a kitchen while her father told her she had failed at the most basic level of being trustworthy. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Your grandfather wants to speak with you." I straightened without meaning to. Even then, even in disgrace, some reflex of childhood still lived in me when it came to my grandfather. I want to tell you about him the way I knew him before this. His name is Walter Whitmore. He is 81 years old. He was born in a farmhouse that did not have electricity yet, in a county people now drive through without noticing unless they need gas or a restroom. He built his life from discipline, work, and a kind of quiet dignity that I used to think belonged to another century. He never raised his voice when I was growing up. He didn't need to. He was the kind of man whose silence could make you correct yourself. The kind of man who polished his shoes on Saturdays and folded old newspapers into exact squares and thanked waitresses by name. He believed in legacy, in family, in the idea that your name should mean something long after you're gone. He had lost a son in 1987, my Uncle Thomas. I was too young to understand it then, but even as a child, I could feel the shape that grief had carved into him. It made him gentler in some ways, harder in others. He loved fiercely, but without performance. He did not throw affection around carelessly. When he praised you, it meant something. When he looked disappointed, it felt like weather changing. "Diana." His voice came through the line rougher than my father's, older but still exact. "Grandpa, I've been told what happened. No cushioning, no detour, no false softness. I saw what Ethan sent." I swallowed. Okay. He was quiet for a moment, not searching for words, measuring them. "I want to ask you a question," he said, "and I want the truth." "Yes." "Did you understand what you were doing while you were doing it?" The question hit harder than anything anyone had said so far. Not because it was cruel, because it was clean. No room to hide inside it. No easy way to shift blame to loneliness or ego or boredom or unmet needs or emotional confusion. Just that one hard question. "Did you understand?" I looked down at the table. My hand was trembling. I told myself it was harmless. Silence. A long silence. So long I wondered if the call had dropped. Then he repeated the word back to me. Harmless. Not mocking. Worse. He said it the way a person says a word slowly, so you can hear how absurd it sounds from outside your own head. "Harmless," he said again. "A child breaking a plate by accident is harmless. Missing an appointment is harmless. Forgetting to send a birthday card is harmless." He stopped. "What you did was not harmless." I pressed the heel of my hand to my mouth. His voice stayed steady. "What you did reached your son." Another pause. "It reached your husband." Another. "It reached that young woman whose life had nothing to do with your selfishness until you dragged it into hers. Kelsey." I had never even heard her voice, but suddenly I could picture her far too clearly, waking up in the dark to a forwarded thread from a stranger, reading words that blew open her marriage before dawn. "There is no version of this," my grandfather said, "that is small. There is no version that is private. There is no version that leaves the people around you untouched." I closed my eyes. "I know. No," he said, and for the first time there was heat under the restraint. "I don't think you did know, because if you had known, truly known, you would have stopped." That one landed deep. Because he was right. Not entirely right in the simple sense. I had known it was wrong. Of course I had. Every message had carried the outline of that knowledge. But I had not allowed myself to understand its size. I had reduced it, renamed it, minimized it until it could fit inside my own excuses. My grandfather continued, quieter now. I'm 81 years old, Diana. I don't have the energy left for pretending the world is other than what it is. You are my granddaughter. That does not change. The words should have comforted me. Instead, they only made the next ones more devastating. But what you have done is a disgrace. My chest tightened so fast it hurt. A disgrace to this family, to what we built, to what our name is supposed to stand for. He paused. Then he said the sentence I would hear in my head for weeks afterward in the dark, while staring at an unfamiliar ceiling at 3 a.m. You are a disgrace to this bloodline. I made a sound then. I don't know what kind. Not quite a sob. Not quite a word. Grandpa, I'm not finished. The firmness in his voice brought me back to stillness instantly, the way it had when I was a child and he caught me lying about finishing homework. I hope, he said, that you sit with this long enough to understand every person it touched. I hope you live with it until it changes you into someone your son may someday be able to look at again. His voice roughened on the word son. That was the first moment I heard his heartbreak, not just his judgment. Not heartbreak for me, for Nathan, for the boy carrying something he never should have had to carry. That is what I hope for, he said. But I also need you to hear this from me directly. I am ashamed of what you have done. Ashamed of it in my family. Ashamed of it with my name attached. No one had ever spoken to me that way before. Not because I was especially good, because my family simply did not speak dramatically. They were measured people, controlled people. If they were wounded, they became quieter, not louder. So when my grandfather used a word like ashamed, it came with the force of a verdict. He exhaled. Your father is taking the phone back now. And then he was gone. Just like that. My father came back on the line. There was a strange stiffness to his breathing, and I wondered if he had stood there through all of it, listening with one hand braced on the counter, looking out the window the way he did when something was difficult. We'll be in touch, he said. Then he hung up too. I sat on the kitchen floor after that. Not because I chose to, because there was nowhere else left to go. The tile was cold beneath my legs. Tile Ethan and I had installed together 8 years earlier during a long weekend project that had once made us feel competent and solid and almost romantic in a practical adult way. We had watched tutorials, argued about spacing, laughed when one crooked edge forced us to redo an entire row. I sat on those same tiles now with my phone in my hand, thinking about how a life can remain physically intact while every invisible structure inside it gives way. Disgrace. Bloodline, ashamed. Words that would have sounded old-fashioned from anyone else. From him, they sounded permanent. I kept seeing my grandfather at 70, at 75, at 80, still mowing his own lawn, still standing straight, still attending church in polished shoes, still carrying himself like a man, answerable to his own conscience every day of his life. And now I had become something he needed to explain to himself. Maybe that was part of punishment, too. Not just losing the people you love, becoming difficult for them to name. I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for the light in the kitchen to shift. Long enough for the coffee in my untouched mug to go completely cold. Long enough to realize that shame has texture. It is not abstract. It lives in the body, in the spine, in the throat, in the stomach. It makes even breathing feel like something you must earn. By evening, I heard Nathan's bedroom door open upstairs. Then footsteps. Careful, measured, familiar. My son always walked the way Ethan did, like he had no interest in attracting attention to himself unless necessary. He came into the kitchen and stood at the counter with his back to me. Didn't look at me, just reached for a glass. Filled it with water, drank half of it standing there. And in that long silence between us, I understood something terrible. The judgment from my parents, from my father, from my grandfather. That pain was sharp, but survivable. This was the wound I didn't know how to live through. My son in the same room, close enough to touch, a universe away. He set the glass down carefully, still not turning around. And then he asked very quietly, "Are you really moving out? Are you really moving out?" His voice was steady, too steady. The kind of steady that doesn't come from calm. It comes from holding something down so tightly it can't rise to the surface. I looked at his back, at the way his shoulders had changed over the past year. Broader now, more defined. At the slight tension in the way he stood, like he was bracing himself for whatever answer I gave. "Yes," I said. The word felt heavier than it should have. "This weekend." He nodded once, not turning around, not reacting. just absorbing. Where are you going? An apartment, I said. It's not far. 6 miles. You can come whenever you want. We'll figure out a schedule. You and your dad. I stopped, because I could hear it even as I was saying it. The artificial structure of it, the way I was trying to organize something that had already broken beyond clean lines and shared calendars. Nathan picked up the glass again, took another sip, set it down. Then, finally, he turned and looked at me. I had seen my son angry before, frustrated, embarrassed. Teenage versions of intensity that pass quickly, like summer storms. This wasn't that. This was something quieter. Something that had settled in. Something that wasn't going anywhere anytime soon. Did you love him? The question landed softly. But it cut deeper than anything else so far. Not because of what it asked, because of what it implied. That love, real love, might have been the only thing that could justify what I had done. And even that wouldn't have been enough. But maybe it would have made it make sense. No, I said. The truth came out quickly this time. Clean. Immediate. Because there was no reason left to soften it. His jaw tightened. Then why? There it was again. The question. The same one from the phone. But now it was worse. Because now he was looking at me. Not through a screen. Not through distance. Right here. Waiting. I opened my mouth. And for a second, just a second, I considered lying. Not a full lie. Something shaped like truth, but easier to carry. Something about feeling lonely. About drifting apart from his father. About not being seen. All the phrases people use when they need their mistakes to sound like they came from somewhere understandable. But none of that would survive his eyes. Nathan had always been observant. Even as a child, he noticed things most people missed. Patterns. Inconsistencies. Truth. If I lied now, he would know. And whatever fragile thread still existed between us, it would snap. I don't have an answer that makes sense, I said finally. My voice shook. I didn't try to stop it. I don't have one that makes sense to you. I don't even have one that makes sense to me. He didn't move. Didn't blink. I knew it was wrong, I continued. Every step of it, I knew, and I did it anyway. Saying it out loud felt like stepping off something high without knowing what was below. I told myself it didn't matter, I said. That it wouldn't reach anyone. That it was contained. I almost said the word. Almost said harmless again. But I couldn't. Not in front of him. I was wrong, I said instead. Silence filled the space between us. Heavy. Unforgiving. I'm sorry, I added, quieter now. I am so sorry. Nathan looked at me for a long moment, and I could see it. Not just anger. Not just hurt. But something else layered underneath. Disappointment. Confusion. A kind of loss that didn't know where to go. I don't want to hear that right now, he said. His voice didn't rise. Didn't break. It just closed. I know, I said. Maybe later. 2 words. Soft. Uncertain. But not final. And somehow, that made them more powerful than anything else he could have said. Maybe later. Not forgiveness. Not even willingness. Just a door that wasn't fully locked. Okay, I whispered. He picked up his glass. Turned away. Walked back toward the hallway. And then he was gone again. The sound of his bedroom door closing was quiet. Careful. Just like always. I stayed in the kitchen long after that. Sitting at the table. Hands wrapped around a mug of coffee that had long since gone cold. Staring at nothing. Repeating those 2 words in my head over and over again. Maybe later. I held on to them the way you hold on to something small when everything else has been taken. Not because they meant anything concrete. Because they were all I had left. I moved out on Sunday. There was no argument. No drawn-out goodbye. No dramatic moment where everything was said that needed to be said. Because there was nothing left to say. Ethan wasn't home when I packed. I don't know if that was intentional. Part of me thinks it was. He had always been precise. Efficient. He understood the weight of moments. And he understood when removing himself from them made things cleaner. Nathan stayed in his room. The door closed. Just like the day before, I packed what I needed. Clothes. Documents. A few books. I stood in the bedroom for a while longer than necessary, looking at the bed, the dresser, the small, ordinary details of a life that had once felt permanent. Then I left. No one walked me out. No one stopped me. The door closed behind me with a soft click. And just like that, I was no longer part of that house. The apartment smelled like fresh paint. That was the first thing I noticed. That and the silence. Not the familiar silence of a home you know intimately. Not the layered quiet filled with recognizable sounds, the hum of the refrigerator, the creak of a stair, the distant rhythm of someone else moving in another room. This silence was different, empty, unfamiliar. It didn't belong to me yet. The space felt like it was waiting to see who I would be inside it. I didn't know the answer to that. It was a 2-bedroom apartment. I chose it that way on purpose. The second bedroom was for Nathan, not because I knew he would come, but because the possibility needed a place to exist. I set that room up first, before my own. A bed, a dresser, a lamp, simple, functional. I stood in the doorway for a long time after everything was in place, trying to imagine him there, trying to picture him dropping his backpack on the floor, sitting on the edge of the bed, scrolling through his phone like he always did, trying to build a future out of something that hadn't happened yet. I bought a plant, a small one, placed it on the windowsill. Nathan liked plants. He used to water them every Sunday morning without being asked. I chose one that was hard to kill, because I didn't trust myself to take care of anything fragile right now. He didn't come. Not that week. Not the next. 3 weeks passed. The second bedroom stayed untouched. Perfect. Unused. Like a space preserved in time. Ethan texted occasionally. Short updates. Nathan has practice at 4. He has a math test Friday. He's doing okay. Always about Nathan. Never about me. I understood. There was nothing left between us that required conversation. Only logistics. And even those were minimal. The quiet at night was the hardest. Every building has sounds. The old house had been full of them. Familiar. Predictable. Comforting. This apartment had its own language. Pipes shifting. A distant door closing somewhere down the hall. Footsteps above me. I lay awake at 3 a.m. listening, waiting for those sounds to become familiar. Waiting for something, anything, to feel like it belonged to me. That's when the thoughts came. Not the loud ones. Not the obvious regrets. The quieter ones. The precise ones. The ones that didn't let me look away. I thought about the word I had used, over and over again. Harmless. How easily it had come to me. How convenient it had been. A word that stripped weight from something that had always been heavy. A word that allowed me to step over lines I knew were there. I had chosen it. Deliberately. Because it made what I was doing easier to carry. Easier to continue. I had needed that word. Because without it, I would have had to stop. Now I understood what it had actually cost. Not in theory. Not in abstract. In reality. My son's voice saying, "I hate you." My parents stepping back. My grandfather's voice, steady, unshaking, calling me a disgrace. The house continuing without me. My place inside it erased. And still, somewhere inside all of that, 2 words remained. Small, fragile, but real. Maybe later. I didn't know if that later would come. I didn't know what it would look like if it did. I didn't know if I would recognize it when it arrived. But I held on to it anyway. Because it was the only thing that hadn't been completely taken from me. And for now, that had to be enough. 3 weeks. That's how long it had been since I moved out. 3 weeks of learning the sounds of a place that didn't know me yet. 3 weeks of waking up at 3 a.m. with the same thoughts sitting quietly at the center of everything. This is what it costs. The second bedroom was still untouched. I hadn't gone in there much after setting it up. Not because I didn't want to. Because I didn't know how to stand in a space that existed entirely for someone who had chosen not to enter it. The bed was still made. The lamp still angled toward the wall the way I had placed it. The plant on the windowsill still alive, barely. I watered it every Sunday, just like Nathan used to. A routine I borrowed from him, hoping somehow it would keep something between us from disappearing completely. It felt like maintenance, not of the plant, of the possibility. Sable said this was normal. Distance is a form of processing, she told me during one of our meetings. She sat across from me in her office, precise as always, documents arranged in clean lines, her pen placed exactly parallel to the edge of her notebook. The absence doesn't mean permanence, she added. It means he's deciding what this means to him. I nodded. Because that made sense. Everything Sable said made sense. That was why I trusted her. She didn't offer comfort. She offered accuracy. "How are you actually doing?" she asked then. Not the polite version. The real one. I looked at her for a moment. "I'm managing." She held my gaze. "That's not the same as okay." "I know." A small pause. "I'll be okay eventually." The words felt theoretical. Like something I was choosing to believe rather than something I could feel yet. Sable nodded once. "You will be," she said. No hesitation. No softening. Just certainty. I held on to that the same way I held on to Nathan's words. Not because I felt it. Because someone precise had said it. The institutional review was still ongoing. That was the phrase. Clinical. Detached. As if what had happened could be contained within language that removed its emotional shape. I was on administrative leave. My office key had been returned. My parking access revoked. My email restricted. 9 years. 9 years of building something. Courses. Students. A teaching award. Evaluations that said things like, "She changed the way I think." And now, I was not allowed to step inside the building. Not allowed to occupy the space where that version of me had existed. There would be a finding. Eventually. There would be consequences. Formal ones. Documented ones. Sable was managing all of it. Carefully. Strategically. But even she couldn't manage the part that mattered most. The part that had nothing to do with policy. I hadn't spoken to Noah. I wasn't going to. Whatever existed there, whatever I had told myself it had ended the moment everything else began collapsing. His life was his to navigate now, and I had no place in it. I heard, through a channel I hadn't asked for, that he and his ex-girlfriend, Kelsey, were in counseling. I didn't know if they would stay together. I didn't try to find out. That story no longer belonged to me. It never should have. But I thought about her sometimes, more than I expected to. Not in a dramatic way. Not in guilt that demanded attention. In quieter moments. When I was standing in the kitchen, or lying awake at night, I thought about the exact moment her phone lit up at 2:47 a.m. A forwarded thread from a stranger, containing her life, rearranged without her consent. She deserved better than that. She deserved better than me. My mother texted once, just once, thinking of you. 2 words, no punctuation, no follow-up. I stared at that message for a long time, longer than I want to admit, because I understood what it meant. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, but reach. A small one, careful, measured, expensive. I wrote back, thank you. That was it. 5 words between us. A conversation reduced to its most minimal form. But it mattered. It mattered because she had chosen to cross the distance, even slightly. And I stored that, carefully, the way you store something fragile you might need later. My father didn't call again. My grandfather didn't either. I didn't expect them to. Some people say what they need to say once, and then they let it stand. I understood that about them. I didn't resent it. Not really. What they had given me wasn't comfort. It was clarity. And clarity, I was learning, is its own kind of mercy. Ethan was still in the house. Our house. He was still making coffee in the mornings. Still packing Nathan's lunch. Still showing up. The way he always had. That was the part I couldn't stop thinking about. Not the affair. Not the messages. Not even the moment everything was revealed. But the years before it. 11 years of consistency. Of quiet presence. Of reliability that I had mistaken for something less. Predictable. Ordinary. Safe. I had used those words like they were criticisms. Now I understood what they actually were. Evidence of a kind of love that doesn't need to announce itself. A kind of love that shows up every day and asks for nothing except that you do the same. And I hadn't. I drove past the house once. I didn't plan to. It just happened. I was on my way to Sable's office, took a turn too early, and there it was. The kitchen window visible from the street. I slowed down. Just for a second. Looked through the glass. I don't know what I expected to see. Something different, maybe. Something that reflected the scale of what had happened. But the house looked the same. Still. Ordinary. Intact. There was a coffee mug in the drying rack. I recognized it. White. Slight chip on the handle. I had bought it 3 years ago without thinking. And there it was. Still part of that kitchen. Still part of that life. Without me. I drove away. Because there was nothing else to do. At night, the apartment settled around me. The sounds were starting to become familiar. Not comforting, but recognizable. That felt like progress. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, and I thought about the word again. Harmless. I took it apart, examined it, turned it over from every angle. A word that means no weight, no consequence, no one gets hurt. I had chosen it, not because it was true, because it was useful, because it allowed me to continue doing something I knew I should stop. It created a version of reality that I could live inside. A smaller one. A safer one. A false one. Now, I understood the real definition. Harmless is what something is before it touches anyone. After that, you don't get to name it anymore. My son said, I hate you. Quietly. Completely. And then, he said something else. 2 words that refused to leave me. Maybe later. I held on to them every night. Not like hope. Not exactly. More like direction. A possibility. A future that had not been completely closed. I don't know what that later will require. Time. Change. Consistency. All the things I failed to offer when it mattered. But I know this. If it comes, if there is a moment where he looks at me again without that distance in his eyes, I will meet it differently. Not with excuses. Not with softened language. Not with words like harmless. With truth. With accountability. With something real enough to stand on. For now, I wait. In an apartment that smells less like fresh paint and more like something lived in. In a life that no longer fits the shape I thought it would have. Holding on to 2 words in the dark at 3 a.m. Maybe later. And for the first time since everything broke, I understand what it means to earn something. Not expect it. Not assume it. Earn it. Slowly. Quietly. The way trust is built. The way it should have been all along.